Well, thank you for everyone for hanging in with us today. This has been a long day. It's been very enriching, and there's been some fantastic conversations, both in the panels and in the hallways. This is just such a rich opportunity to get in the room with folks and tackle all of these really complex topics. Today we've explored everything from how bikes and buses connect people to opportunity, how housing and land use shape our communities, our mobility choices, how our employers and our communities can work together. In this closing panel, we're going to try to put those ideas in conversation with the people who shape policy and to help turn us today's insights into tomorrow's actions. So to do that, I have such a fantastic panel here. We're so lucky we have them. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. Senator Pat Brennan.
Sure, I think you just did that for me.
Can you tell us what you do in the legislature?
I am Senator Pat Brennan. I represent the Grand Isle District, serve on Senate Transportation and Senate Appropriations.
And Senator Kesha Ram-Hinsdale.
Thank you all for having me. I am the Senate Majority Leader. I serve on Senate Economic Development, which I previously chaired, and I serve on Senate Education in the afternoon. I see at least one of my colleagues, Senator Wendy Harrison. I hope she's already received a shout out, but together we've done a lot of work on the intersection of housing and transportation and health. So very much enjoyed hearing the themes that have emerged already.
And joining us from Congresswoman Becca Balint's office on a break for his work he's doing to get the government restarted, and also the mayor of the best city in Vermont, I'm completely unbiased here, Thomas Renner.
Thank you, Austin. My name is Tom. Yeah, what else do you say? I don't know. But yeah, I'm Thomas Renner. I work for Congresswoman Becca Balint. I cover a variety of different issue areas. I do a lot of grant work and appropriations work, and then I do transportation work as well. And I will shout out one of my colleagues who's in the back of the room, kind of hiding, but Ryan McLaren with Senator Welch's office. My standpoint will be mostly from the House. You know who to talk to if you've got Senate questions.
There might be a situation where you have to phone a friend, huh? All right. Well, I think let's start off with just a little bit of the elephant in the room here. Federal transportation funding and policy are shifting in response to national priorities, and I would editorialize a little bit of the dysfunction that's happening in Washington. And at the same time, our transportation funding here in Vermont is strained. So how do you see Vermont navigating these uncertainties to keep advancing the state and local priorities in housing, economic growth, and transportation in the interdisciplinary way that we talked about here today? And I'll lead with you, Tom, if that's all right.
That's fine. I think I'd be remiss for not mentioning in this moment that we are in a government shutdown. So, Ryan and I both aren't getting paid today. Many federal workers are not getting paid at all, and a lot of the federal government is starting to slow down if it hasn't already stopped. My boss, Congresswoman Balint, flew back to DC today. The Republicans in the House did not fly back to DC today. The Republicans are in control of the House, so without the Republicans there, not much business can get done. So nobody knows how long this shutdown is going to be, but I at least know it's still happening right now and likely isn't going to open back up tomorrow. So when we talk about funding and we talk about kind of essentially the nexus of everything that we need to know in terms of what we're getting from the federal government, right, what's going to be coming to Vermont, a lot of that unfortunately lays in limbo at the moment. H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill, didn't have too many impacts on surface transportation, actually. And the chair and the vice chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Department they've both talked about wanting to go into reauthorizations once the government opens back up and once Congress is doing its work again. So to us, that's hopeful to hear that they want to work in a bipartisan manner on that committee, ultimately the committee that is going to do all of the money creation for many of the grants and many of the programs that people in this room access, that the legislature will access. But we are in times that we're not used to. I used to work for Senator Leahy. That's where I started my career. Those were very different times. We legislated in the federal government in a very different way back then. My boss, the Congresswoman, has only known being in the minority and seeing a somewhat form of dysfunction in the House. So what we have to focus on, and what's really important, and I say, some of you have probably heard me say this before, we need to hear from you. We need to hear from you what you need, what it is that you need the Congresswoman advocating for, and what the gaps you're seeing. That's really important. I think next month, I was telling Senator Brennan earlier that I've been invited to come testify in the House and in the Senate. That's important. We need to know what you all are dealing with so that we can try to help you. It's the same with all of your organizations. And Austin, I forget what you specifically asked me, actually, but I really just wanted to lead with that. It's so important to really understand what a government shutdown means and what that looks like. Once we come out of it, then we can really start dealing with the one big beautiful bill that we all heard about before the shutdown happened. Where we know that is impacting transportation is in all of the climate-related funding, right? So the one big beautiful bill takes a lot of money out of all of those climate programs that we really liked. So programs that helped with walkability and bikeability, unfortunately, the federal government isn't going to be as a huge partner to the state as it had been in previous years. It's always very depressing when I get to talk on these things, so I'm going to let you go to your next question, Austin, but really reach out to us, let the entire delegation know what it is that you need to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish.
Thank you, Thomas. We do have to stay on the depressing topic for just a second more, because I want to hear from our resident appropriator and transportation fund expert here to my right, Senator Brennan. Can you talk a little bit about navigating some of the things that Tom has outlined at the federal level down here at the state level?
Sure, Austin. First of all, when they do get back to work and get us a bill to look at and get things accomplished in Washington, here at home, we face the difficult task of matching whatever they come up with for federal funds. You know, we have three sources of revenue in transportation: the gas tax, purchase and use, and DMV fees. And we're restricted to those three areas. So in the past, to my knowledge, we've never turned back federal funds. It's something you definitely do not want to do, because the next time they come around and say, well, Vermont didn't use them last time, well, they can do with less. So we've always matched federal funds. This year, with declining revenues, Senator Harrison's sitting here. She's going to keep me honest. She sits right across from me on Senate Transportation. We haven't seen it yet, but we're going to be presented with a budget that has severe challenges as far as transportation revenues. So we've commissioned through our committee a legislative study that the Agency of Transportation is charged with. We should be seeing that when we get back. It'll present us with a number of different options. First of all, it's going to lay out the situation we're in, and we'll be looking at a budget that's, I would say, maybe drastically pared down. So that's our charge. We'll look at that. It's up to us to come up with some innovative ideas for the future. Hopefully, there'll be some suggestions in this study, but we have some of our own. Some won't be that well received, some may. But I think it all hinges on us being able to improve the way we fund transportation and increase revenues.
Looking at Senator Harrison, he Did a good job there? All right, all right.
That's good. I was under the gun, but thank you.
So moving to more optimistic stuff. Senator Ram-Hinsdale, you would have been ecstatic earlier. We have a room full of land use nerds. And Commissioner Farrell asked from the podium who knew about the Home Act and Act 181, and quite a lot of hands went up. So actually, I'm going to say, folks, you know, this senator was one of the catalysts for both those pieces of legislation and pushed them through. So a quick round of applause on that, because
Thank you.
but folks talked about how to utilize that legislation and how to integrate, you know, multimodal transportation and what's next. So I think the question on everyone's mind is, what's next?
Ooh. Well, first of all, a lot of you are the ones who make us optimistic. And I guess I'm at the age now where I just see a lot of young people or people younger than me. And it's very exciting. My senior thesis at UVM was on environmental justice, the quality of our mobile home and manufactured housing communities, Superfund sites, et cetera. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it and introduce legislation. We will help you. And I feel like all of the ways that I was trying to pull disparate things together when I was in natural resource planning and political science and a music minor are, you know, sort of more in fashion right now. But I will start by saying how I feel I was able to champion and pass both of those pieces of legislation, and the CHIP bill this year, that's an infrastructure bill on top of that, a $2 billion infrastructure package. And first of all, I call them things like the Home Act because I can never remember the numbers, so please don't worry about that part. But I think sometimes I go back to some big picture thinking about how we frame these conversations. I don't know if the Center for Appreciative Inquiry still exists at Champlain College, or if anybody's here from Champlain College, but I remember talking to them when I was a new legislator, and they were working with an airline. You can guess which one based on your experiences, but this airline was having a lot of trouble losing people's bags. And they were working with them to say, you know, you can't say, hey, we're the airline that's working on not losing your bag. How do we reframe that? And they decided to be the airline with the best arrival experience, right? Another small example, and then I'll tell you where I'm going with this. I was fascinated once hearing, and they don't have the same market share to be quite as cocky, but at one time, you know, Netflix would say, we're not competing with Disney Plus, we're not competing with Hulu, we're competing with sleep. So when I was working on the Home Act, I kept thinking, I don't want to make enemies out of anyone in this continuum. NIMBYs, second homeowners, you know, and any group that can be vilified on one side or the other of this conversation. I said, my enemy is vacancy. My enemy is empty space, underutilized space that could be filled with love and laughter and kids doing homework and people being warm. And that's what I'm going to stay focused on. And I was thinking a lot about that in the context, and I just came back from YIMBY Town, by the way. Maybe some of you have heard of it or have attended. And Bill McKibben and I both were speakers at that event. So it actually just makes me feel really good that, you know, the idea of development as not the enemy is catching on, even with our most vigorous environmental and climate activists. But there's a lot I love about the way that people in that space, your people, are thinking about transportation and housing. And when I think about what you all are combating, and what you can combat with alternative, joyful forms of transportation, you're combating loneliness. Right? Just sit with that for a second. I mean, we're a very lonely society in our single family homes with, in Vermont, the highest proportion of 1 or 2 person households. 70% of our households in Vermont are 1 or 2 people. And you know we don't have enough multifamily housing for that to not just be a lot of older people who can't afford their heating bills, who are in large, drafty, historic homes. And then we have people who get in their single occupancy vehicle and they go to work, or they work from home, or they barely talk to their families or can get them on the phone. And we have an epidemic. We have an epidemic of really sad and lonely ways of interacting with the world. So, you know, we get into all the jargon, and it's great. But when transportation's actually been on my mind a lot, and I'll share this anecdote and then we'll move on. But I just wrote about it in the paper, and the woman that is in question in this piece actually called me, and things are just really working out for her. The people at Toyota hugged me today. So I've been without a car for the last few weeks. And for many of us, especially those of us who have to travel the state, that is a minor inconvenience, but it's not life-altering. And when my car first broke down, I happened to be sitting in a room with a woman who's 75, who had worked at Toyota her whole life, and she was hearing from the mechanics at Toyota that she could not drive her car home. It was not safe. And instantly she was beside herself. How am I going to get to church on Sunday? How am I going to get to the grocery store and my doctor's appointments? And then she, basically started saying the government is taking all my money, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if she knows who I am. But I mean, she's right, healthcare is getting really expensive. This is a very desperate time for a lot of people. And she's absolutely right. And I don't care if she blames Democrats or Republicans, she is struggling. So, me and this other woman in the room just kind of turned to her, helped her cancel some medical bills. Later, this is one of those Oprah stories, because she did work at Toyota and they got her a car, and she called me and thanked me. But the point being that we have to be the Oprah of the buses and the Oprah of the bicycles, and the people who come into somebody's life when they need it most and lend a helping hand. Because otherwise we are losing. We're just losing to people who have a ready alternative or can give away a car on television, and make that the highest and best promise of this country. So, when I've talked to my colleagues for over a decade, it's always been framed as everyone needs their car and a pickup truck and, freedom. But Democrats don't talk enough about the 25% of Vermonters who cannot get to the grocery store or a doctor's appointment on time. We have failed to not just talk about electric vehicles, and to talk about all of the people who are completely left behind in the society that we've constructed. I don't know if that's optimistic, but I'm just trying, you all are on the right track, and I'm trying to get you to really reach people where they are. This is one of those times where if you're not helping someone with the dollars that we're spending, if you're not feeding a child, if you're not keeping a senior warm, if you're not getting someone to work, we can't talk about it. That's how we're thinking about our budgets right now. So there's money. There's money to take every child in the state on a bus to school from wherever they live. There's money for expensive ambulance care. We need to take some of that money and put it into a totally different system that serves everyone, and get over a lot of the stigmas and the fears we have about doing that. Thank you.
I'm just gonna look at, we started a little late. What's our time like at this point? 5 more minutes. All right, well, I think what I was hoping to wrap up with, I think you set up pretty well. And so, what should the businesses and nonprofits, community leaders in this room do tomorrow and the weeks to come to keep the momentum going towards transformation, not just in our transportation systems, but in our housing systems, and together, as we've discussed today, in this future resource-constrained environments. I think you just touched on that a little bit, Senator Ram-Hinsdale. What do you think, Senator Brennan?
Well, Austin, I think our business community and everything we do should be thinking transportation, housing, and how we incorporate those into our business plan, for one. And it just, you know, in general, how we're going to improve connectivity, access to mobility, transportation. It should be a part of our discussion in everything we do. From, as Kesha said, the housing is a big one. How do we tie into transportation and improve housing at the same time? It's very doable. It's inexpensive. There are models out there. We have legislative studies telling us how to go about it. We have to, I think we need to bring in the business community a little more than we have in the past, and just bring them into the fold and ask, what can we do for you? What can you do for us? Van pooling, do you do carpooling? How do you do it? Do you have access to plenty of parking spaces? Do you need those parking spaces if you have mobility and have van pooling and carpooling and ride sharing going on? Chances are not, and we talked earlier today, parking spaces are at a premium. I was throwing out a $10,000 number. Austin tells me in the Burlington area it's more like 15. So anything we can do to pare down the need for parking and the increase in mobility, public transit, biking, access to these businesses, and partner with business owners is the way of the future, I think.
Thomas, anything you want to add?
Yeah, you know, it's not all doom and gloom from Washington, D.C. There's a lot of it, but it's not all of it. Every now and then, President Trump and some of his ramblings will talk about housing and how he wants to be known as a housing president. So, you know, my boss, in her first year in Congress, introduced this giant housing bill, $500 million that would be spent across the country. The Harris campaign picked that bill up, but we know how that went. But importantly, those conversations are still happening in DC. Every single district in the House, somebody's experiencing a housing crisis. The most far-right member of the House has people in his district who tell him that they don't have housing. Employers tell him they don't have housing, so they can't get people to come and work in their factories, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a place where my boss really feels like she can work with Republican members to try to create some housing spending. Now, along with that, these employers are telling their congresspeople the same thing. Great, you built that housing complex. However, they can't get to my factory because they're low-income people who do not have a car. So where we see there, we might get some, and I'm looking at you, Clayton, we might be able to get some money for, expanded bus lines. It's not going to be electric buses like we're hoping for. It's going to be some conventional gas-powered buses, but those are the ways that we're going to be trying to be working, and the Congresswoman is positioning herself. And I know that Senator Welch and Senator Sanders are also looking at ways to work with the Republican members in the Senate so that we can still continue to move forward. It might be a forward that we weren't hoping to move forward in that way. We might be going left and forward instead of right and forward, but we're going to continue working to get that money to Vermont. And you were talking earlier, Senator, about Vermont always grabbing those federal funds the best way that we can. I don't know what it is about the state government and the legislature. You all are very, very good at getting the existing federal funds. Yeah, you're sticky at getting those federal funds. So the Congresswoman, the Senate, and the two senators are going to be working on creating those funds. But they just might not be exactly what we're looking for yet. But let's make sure that your orgs are looking for those funds, that you're talking with the legislature, you're talking with the Scott administration when you see that those funds exist, and making sure that you're marketing your programs to be able to obtain those funds. Because the money's going to be there. Congress is always going to appropriate money. The president's always going to want programs that they can have a big billboard that will say brought to you by President Trump. So let's just make sure that Vermont is getting those dollars.
Well, thank you for wrapping it up in a really optimistic way there. And, I think that's the important thing here. While it might feel uncertain in the current time, and it can be easy to not be optimistic, at the end of the day, the investments that are made in transportation, the investments in time and energy to reform our land use laws, to make them consider transportation and housing and serve Vermonters best. These things, we're moving forward with them. And done right, these investments shape our communities for decades, and it's because of the work done by everyone in this room, as well as the folks on our panel. So I hope that this panel's been helpful in understanding some of the perspective of the folks who are making those changes, in law. And I hope that you can take this and take this insight and put it to work tomorrow and the weeks to come to keep advancing all of our shared priorities to best serve Vermont and have it reflect the dreams that we talked about earlier today. So with that, I thank you to our panel, and thank you to everyone today for going through. Oh, yeah, we got time. All right. Do you want a roaming mic?
So I don't know who's the best suited to answer this question, but in your opinion, how do you save urban transit? How do you turn around this funding crisis that Green Mountain Transit is currently in?
Who wants to take that easy one? I see Clayton
I
Clark in
would
the front
assume
row.
you're
He's ready to
talking
take notes.
You're talking about state funding?
I actually don't know it. Actually, that's kind of what's the solution in your opinion? Like, should it be more state funding, or should municipalities have to step up? Like, what do you think is a potential solution?
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are before we jump on you?
Sure.
Your question.
I am Chris Ewan. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Essex Junction.
Yes. Okay, we've met, and I think you're great, and I want you to come speak in our committee. But there's one tweak I would make to your question, because I think it's the only way to save any of this, is to create a coalition between the urban and the rural in Vermont. Is if it looks like it's for Chittenden County, the bus stops running in Newport at 4 p.m. Who does that serve? So, one of the most, I think, helpful carpool opportunities was the Montpelier link, right? That was actually very popular. Sorry, Clayton, I know this is sensitive, for people who could get work done and collaborate with colleagues, et cetera. And I'll let him answer where the money's coming from. But I think why we have seen this not rise to the level of being a priority is because there's a lot of people in the state who think this was never for me. This was somebody else getting more money while I get left further and further behind, and I can't make my car payments and I can't afford gas. The Northeast Kingdom is the most energy poverty region of the state, and they have to drive the longest distance to get to work. They can't find quality housing out there. We don't build enough senior housing out there for people to stay in their community. They have to, go into a high-rise building in Burlington that they probably didn't want to go into. So the anger that people are feeling at my political party is, you're telling us we can't grow, we can't move families in here, we can't have housing, we can't have a hospital, we can't have a school. You're just leaving us to decay. That's what's happening right now, and I need you all to help me share that message in every little town meeting and planning meeting where a handful of people are trying to make their voices much louder than the vast majority of Vermonters who want these things and who want them to work for their family and their parents.
I'm going to find you the money.
Yes, that's what we like to hear from Becca.
Perfect.
Well, I'll just go back to the transportation, my transportation routes, and I can't solve the big picture as far as appropriations go, but we can certainly work on it. Transportation is I spoke on it earlier, is a declining source, our biggest source, the gas tax, steadily declining. We have to be innovative. We have to think of new ways to fund transportation to match federal funds. I'm certainly not going to advocate for turning back any federal funds this year. So keep in mind those state funds fund public transit, rail, airports, roads, bridges, the whole gamut. And unless we can be very innovative this year, we haven't seen a budget yet. There are a few folks in the room, if they're still here, who might be privy to some information that I'm not, but I said I wasn't going to spill the beans on an idea that my chair and myself have, but we do have some rather they'll bring in $76 million a year to transportation to match federal funds, which is an 80-20 match. That's huge money. It's a tough sell. We'll have to put our salesman hat on and really do a great job of convincing legislators this is a good idea. But, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's a lot of money. But you may see it, and the reason I'm not going to tell you what it is, maybe the administration has thought of it too, or maybe I've put a bug in their ear over the last year, and hopefully we'll see it in the T-bill when we get it in the first week of the session. So we know what's coming. We know it's not going to be pretty, but we're going to be ready for it. Again, the senator and I are really cognizant of what we have to do, and it's just a wait and see approach at this time.
One last question. Anybody? I think everybody's tired. It's been a packed day. A student. Question.
I don't know how we top Senator Brennan's cliffhanger. $76 million. Tune in the first week of January, folks.
Up front here, we saw some wrestling.
I'll be brave. For forward-thinking land use, not being a Vermont resident, being a Rhode Island resident here for school, thinking about how do you manage the land use that's going to housing for tourism and second homeowners, while also managing the fact that we do have a housing crisis and we need to be catering to those people as well, and also maintaining a lot of the sacred land of Vermont that we love so much and we're all up here to enjoy, be that the mountains or the lake or what have you. Where is that conversation going, and how are we managing that land?
Colorado?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, okay. Well, I was about to go off on Colorado. In a good way, because Colorado has county government. We're the one state that doesn't have county government. So Colorado has a system where they can tax second homes based on whether or not the owner is in the county, in the state, in the country, or an international owner. And so we have similar challenges to a place like Colorado, maybe Rhode Island too, I'm not sure, where we in Vermont have the highest rate of second home ownership in the country. It's almost a quarter of our housing stock. And people always said it was the deer camps, and that's about 10% of that quarter. So no, it's not deer camps. In many ways, it's huge family farms that used to house 4 generations that now house 1 or 2 people. By the way, those 1 or 2 people have a lot of money and don't want anybody else to obscure their view. So for the first time in a long time, and many of us have been calling for this for years, last year we passed a property transfer tax that triples the sale tax price of a home when you declare that it will not be rented or not be for your primary residence. And that raised us more money than we had forecasted. So most people actually say, yeah, I'm not here a lot. It is a second home. I can afford to pay more for infrastructure in these communities that I love and that need infrastructure desperately. And so this year we have set in motion a second home property tax. So annually, people who have a second home will pay more than primary residents. And part of that is, it's not just we're enemies of second homes or vacancy, but right now they pay a lower rate than many primary residents in about a third of our towns. So over time, we've really favored, in a lot of ways, vacancy, commercial vacancy and housing vacancy. I do want to say about 40 square miles of the state, I did not misspeak, 40 square miles of the state have water and sewer infrastructure. If we are not fully utilizing that and telling South Burlington, I'm sorry, you are not rural, you have 5 Starbucks and an airport, and you have to build more housing along this water and sewer, even if you unelect me, then we have a problem. I need you to show up to every local meeting and advocate for multifamily housing and public transportation, because people don't want multifamily housing, so they stop it with transportation. And then they say you have to have 5 parking spots, just to get your foot in the door. You all need to take, I've yelled at Rubenstein school professors who are in the South Burlington Land Trust, like God alone knows, you all need to speak up, because just a few voices are stopping a lot of people from being able to own the American dream in this country.
Anything else to add, Senator Brennan or Thomas?
I'm good. How can you top that?
Yeah. Oh, we didn't realize you.
Yeah, I'll just add that everything that the senator said is true, and it will cost a lot of money to do. So this is where I come back to my original point of you need to be reaching out to your delegation and telling your friends who live in other states to be reaching out to their delegations as well. One of the things that the Congresswoman's big bill, housing bill that she introduced, was to help make the construction of condos a lot more affordable. I think we've all probably heard how, if you drive around South Burlington, for example, there's a lot of condos there. None of them were built recently. It's very unaffordable to build condos at the moment. But condos can, and back to what you had said earlier about keeping our beautiful Vermont landscape, you can fit a lot of people in a condo development as opposed to a single family unit development. So if we could build condos, and if Congress can help make it affordable for developers to do that, we'll be able to fit in a lot of people, keep the beauty that people are looking for, but we're also going to need some water infrastructure, so Congress has got to do some more of that. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is to really be calling members of Congress right now.
Yeah, to put a finer point on that, I mean, democracy is a participation sport. Folks have to jump in off the sidelines and participate. And, I think it's worth noting, we talked a lot today about future land use mapping. We talked about the change to place-based jurisdiction in Act 250 with our Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3. So we've kind of laid the rules of the road. We've explained where we want to build. Now it's incumbent on those places that are Tier 1 to build. So folks need to show up and make sure that the place is served with water and sewer, that have the adequate infrastructure, that are the places where those dense walkable communities can happen. They don't shut their doors, and they don't try to prevent new Vermonters from coming in or putting the newest costs on the newest Vermonters. So I'm getting the nod that I think we're at time. Again, thank you to our fantastic panel, and thank you to everyone for such a fantastic day. Onward.
thank you so much for your time and all of that context. Really appreciate your time. We're closing out today. I want to thank everyone for showing up and engaging in this important conversation, for staying here till the end. I hope you leave here today with some new knowledge you can put to work, some new connections to strengthen your efforts, and a renewed sense of possibility for what we can achieve together. Thank you again to our generous slate of sponsors, our keynotes, our presenters, our TRC students, exhibitors, the CATMA team, our policymakers. Thank you all for being here today. I will say what's clear is that transportation is not a side conversation. It is central to how Vermont will grow, thrive, and move forward. So onward. Thank you so much.